What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the Dissident Film Club. Keaton Weiss back once again with Justin Van Voorhis filling in for Russell.
Good day, good day.
So what we're going to do is next week, our film club is going to be on Wednesday instead of Friday because we're going to do our Oscar ballot preview show. And we figure since the Oscars are next Sunday, we shouldn't put an episode out on Friday because then it'll only really remain relevant or watchable for 48 hours. I figure if we do it on Wednesday, it'll give everybody a chance to watch it before they have to make their bets on whatever Oscar pool they are participating in. I have a feeling most of the audience of this show doesn't watch the Oscars very much, but for those who find it, it'll be a fun little show. You know, I always think of the Oscars as a fun way to just get a conversation started about the movies of the year. To me, it doesn't really matter who wins. You know, I don't really have a vested interest in who wins. I don't sit there, threatening to kick the TV in if the wrong movie wins. My dad's friend Wayne did that in 1999. He was very passionate about American Beauty. He loved that movie, and he was afraid that the Cider House Rules was going to win Best Picture. He tells my mother, he says, if the Cider House Rules wins, I'm going to kick a hole in your TV. So I don't get like that. But it's a fun way to get a conversation started about the movies of the year. We love to talk movies, and to me, the Oscars provides material for that conversation. But that'll be next week. This week, sorry, go ahead.
It's funny that there is just because Oscar campaigns are somewhat political. You have to take out ads.
Oh, very political.
There's a little bit of lobbying going on, but it's funny that it never gets nasty to the level that American actual politics. But it'd be funny if it should. Like if you see like these really just slanderous ads and what if there's commercials?
Mysterious suicides.
Yeah, or right. What, you know how they have those commercials where I'm Joe Biden, I endorse this message. Why aren't there
right. Yeah, exactly.
We're the Banshees of Inisherin, we endorse this message. Right. Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, an attack ad against the Fabelmans or something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, actually filmed in America.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, that'll be next week. For this week, though, sort of in anticipation of Oscar week, we're each going to give our picks for our favorite film of 2022. And Justin, you're up first.
Oh yeah, because it's alphabetical. So
barely,
my favorite,
but yes.
Yeah. So last year I was kind of there wasn't any movie that I really loved. I was really looking forward to Spielberg's Fabelmans, and just because I thought that was going to be such a great story, and it was. It just didn't. It just wasn't my absolute favorite. But like the last movie I think I saw of 2022 was Babylon, and Babylon is Damien Chazelle, La La Land, Whiplash. First, by the way, did you see First Man?
No.
Yeah, it's good. Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie. It is about the transition essentially from silent motion pictures to what we call the talkies, and just kind of the lifestyle of the stars pre-transition, and then how hard it was for them to transition to the talkie era. And it's over 3 hours. It was just it's just 3 hours of people have been comparing it to the Wolf of Wall Street in terms of its debauchery, and it's a very debaucherous film. It's a wild movie, but it is just a great example of just massive storytelling on a massive level. I mean, they shoot on film these enormous sets. You have these. Like I said, it's an over 3 hour movie. There's many scenes that could have been truncated, but just great stories. It's kind of episodic. I don't know if you got the feel from it that it has kind of a Paul Thomas Anderson kind of vibe to it. It reminded me a little bit of Boogie Nights, actually. They're kind of, because it's kind of Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt are the stars, but it's kind of an ensemble cast. But it's about a lot of different people and their experiences during this time. But yeah, I love the performances. I just love the and I'll be honest, I really like this movie more so just for personal levels, because it's just kind of just a deep dive in what filmmaking was like during this era, in the silent era, and then in the talkie era, the post-silent era, where during the silent era, I mean, they didn't have the regulations that we do now. People died. It was not that safe. But I just loved seeing what everyone went through to make movies in those days. There's this amazing epic scene about this one day where they're filming, because they filmed all outside back in those days. There's no sound, and just the chaos of trying to get that day's filming done, and the result of it it's just this one shot of Brad Pitt and his leading actress kissing, and then there's like stuff going on in the background, and everything that had to be, with the audience who watches the movie eventually will never know everything that had to be done to get that shot. It's not something that audiences think about. It's something that I think about because I make movies, so I know how hard it is to make something that lasts for only a few seconds, and no one who watches the movie will ever really know what the filmmakers went through to get that. And so that's what that captures. And then you have after that, after the advent of sound, how difficult it was for them to adapt to the sound, not just in terms of technical, where there's this whole like 10-minute scene where they're trying to film something and they can't get used to having to use like boom mics. And then you also have like the actors, where before talkies, you didn't have to really be a good actor. You actually kind of just look good on screen. And then after the advent, they had to act. And so they were bringing in actors from the theater, and Brad Pitt's character obviously discovers he's actually not that great an actor. But overall, I just thought it's just an absolutely enthralling motion picture.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved it as well. It wasn't my favorite of the year, but it's number 2. And, it was very sort of polarizing. Critics were pretty much split 50-50 on it, as were audiences. The Wolf of Wall Street got generally favorable reviews, but you had the same kind of split. It was just too much for some people. Mm-hmm. What you didn't really describe in that summary was just how funny the movie is. It's hysterically funny all the way through, and has such a kinetic pace. It almost feels like a Baz Luhrmann movie at points, especially in the party scenes, and even that great sort of mega scene that you're talking about, where they're shooting all these silent films at once. The thing is, because there was no sound, they could shoot 20 movies on the same lot, side by side. So there's just all this great swooping camera footage of all these different sets happening, just absolute chaos, people screaming, the stress, the kinetic energy. It's just hysterically funny, the pace of the dialogue. And then just when you think the movie's going to slow down, every time you think it's going to slow down, it does something to pick back up and sort of top the level of, I would even say, shock value that came prior, right? So even when they start shooting the sound scenes, right, when they have to be sensitive about every little noise that's made, how are they going to top the sort of chaotic humor of the silent film shoot? And they do. That scene is just phenomenal. I saw the payoff coming with the cameraman. I won't spoil that, but I sensed that was going to happen. I could see that coming. But just the way it's edited, the way they do take after take after take, and they speed up every take so that you're watching the same thing over and over again, but it feels new every time. It's hysterically funny. It is a debaucherous movie. I mean, it pushes the limits of an R rating. It pushes an NC-17, just as Wolf of Wall Street did. So it is extreme, but that's part of what I loved about it. The 3-hour runtime, everything about it is big and excessive and over the top, just as Wolf of Wall Street was. Wolf of Wall Street, to me, is the best film of that decade. That's an absolute masterpiece. Where this falls short for me is that it kind of does lose the plot in self-indulgence in the third act a bit, especially that last montage where Damien Chazelle sort of breaks the fourth wall and starts showing modern movie clips. Like he shows a clip from Avatar and Jurassic Park. Like, to me, that didn't really work. The other time where he breaks
I
the
love
fourth
that.
wall, well, I figured you would love that. Yeah,
because it's about,
that's right up your alley.
It is. Well, it's the it's the advent of all the different types of changes.
No, I understand what you're saying. But that was very much the filmmaker stepping outside the movie and speaking to the audience. And to me, that didn't quite work. The other moment where they kind of got a little too meta was that scene where Brad Pitt is in the bathroom with the studio guy. And, he said, well, why shouldn't we have sound in movies? And then you hear the wet shit coming out of the bathroom stall. And they're like, yeah, why wouldn't people want that? That was very much a wink to the camera. It steps outside of it, which to me just kind of broke a little bit of the tone. So there were some flaws, but it is very episodic. It is very Scorsese-like in that way, just as Goodfellas was episodic, Casino as well.
But didn't you think the Toe Maguire sequence was somewhat reminiscent of Boogie Nights?
Yeah, it was. It was. Sure thing. No, I thought of Boogie Nights as well, especially during the scene where they're filming the talkie, which is just phenomenal, hysterically funny, and incredibly politically incorrect. I mean, when the guy sneezes and the stressed out, whatever first AD starts going off on him about his nose, making all these anti-Semitic cracks about him, about his fucking control your fucking, we can't even say that on YouTube, but that's just scratching the surface. I mean, they use all kinds of words and phrases here that you're generally not allowed to use in film anymore. That's one of the reasons why I think this movie was as polarizing as it was. It's also why it was as funny as it was, because it was just so confident in its, just sort of use of all this very anti-PC language. Like even, Margot Robbie saying that, and when she's at the party with all the big wigs, she's terrific in it. I thought Brad Pitt was, he was Brad Pitt. He basically plays a version of Aldo Rain in every role now, I feel like. I know. He's basically a version of the Inglourious Basterds character, just like the charismatic doofus. You know what I mean? So he was fine in it, but the set design, the cinematography, the music. Obviously, Chazelle incorporates music in 3 of his 4 films have been very music central. You had Whiplash, obviously, which is not a traditional musical. La La Land, which was Justin Hurwitz, who wrote the music for La La Land, did the music for this. The music is fantastic. It just provides this pulse to what is going on, that jazz theme, the big band jazz theme that plays at the beginning and then it reprises sort of throughout the film, was just fantastic. It just has such an energy, such a pulse, such a life to it. What's that?
I think that's the odds-on favorite. The only Oscar this movie is going to win.
It should win production design as well. It's nominated for art direction, and it should absolutely win that. I mean, the sets were fantastic, not just the big mansions at the party scene, but all of the film sets that they recreated. It was just fantastic. The movie is so alive and so fun. It is only for certain tastes. Like I said, this is not for everyone. You're going to know in the first 5 minutes if you'll know the first 5 minutes if the movie is for you. Without spoiling it there, you will learn very, very quickly if you want to keep watching it. It's free to watch on Amazon Prime through Paramount Plus. And so I recommend you give it a shot if you have my sense of humor, which I'm assuming many of the people watching this do. It is a wild ride. It was very polarizing for that reason. It is not without its flaws, but it is fantastic. It is my desert island movie of the year. If I had to watch a movie this year again, it would be this one.
I can't believe this movie was made. I mean, very quickly before we move on. I mean, it was I think it was $100 million budget, and it was I think it was the biggest bomb of last year. It's a prestige picture. They kind of make these movies they probably know they're going to lose money, but they think they're going to get like Oscars for it. And this unfortunately did neither. It didn't really. It was a very polarizing response. So it didn't get all the attention that I think that it deserved. But just watching it, just looking at all the money that was spent on this to tell this story. And to just see, just because, I mean, when you watch those scenes of when they're recreating those old silent films, you can just see like the money on the screen, and that they spent all that money on a movie where you have these characters talking this way, and it is very honest about the extravagance and the excesses of Hollywood pre talkie era. So I was just, and then you have, like I said, it's over 3 hours. So it's just kind of already kind of indulgent. That scene that we mentioned about the transition to the sound and when they're trying to adapt to the mic, I mean, that could have been cut down, I think, at least 5 minutes, but thankfully, I mean, I could have gone on for another 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was great the way it was.
But
it was fantastic as it was.
But the fact is that they kept it. They kept Damien Chazelle's vision, and I'm just very, very jealous of that guy right now. He's very, very good.
Yeah, he's got it. He's definitely got it. And yeah, I mean, one of the things that you didn't think about until you watched the movie is that it's true. Like when they were doing silent films, these were basically high budget photo shoots. So the actors could work drunk and hungover. Like it didn't really matter. As long as they could pull it together to get the shot right for a few seconds at a time, they could work. So they'd have these crazy all night orgy parties and be like, yeah, we've got to be on set at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And they would drag themselves to set and make it happen. Brad Pitt films that big kiss scene totally inebriated after all the shit that they go through.
Right,
to get the camera that they lost, to, repair all the broken shit. During the delay, he's pounding his whiskey in his tent, and the crew has to literally push him up the hill at the end of the day before the sun sets so they could get the shot in. No, it was just, it's wild. It's so much fun. It's so funny. It's really, really terrific, I think. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
But my number one film of the year, and there's some more objectivity in this pick, is Martin McDonagh's The Banshees of Inisherin, starring Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson as two platonic male friends who are going through a platonic male breakup. The Brendan Gleeson character, Colm, decides out of the blue that he no longer wishes to be friends with the duller and simpler Porrick, played by Colin Farrell. And Brendan Gleeson is really having a sort of existential crisis. He's really suffering from depression and trying to find meaning in his life, and he comes to the decision that he's going to find meaning through art and through music, and that he no longer has time to waste in his limited days left on Earth, sort of pounding beers with this dim-witted friend of his. And so he decides to break things off, and the Colin Farrell character obviously doesn't take this very well. He's heartbroken. They live on this remote island, a fictional island of Inisherin, off of the coast of Ireland during the Irish Civil War in 1923. And so because there's just really nothing around, the friendship is really very important to Colin Farrell's character, and he desperately tries to win Colm back. And things take a very dark and morbid turn when Colm issues him an ultimatum that involves literally mutilating himself for every attempt that Porrick makes to sort of rekindle their friendship. And it's just a beautiful movie. This is Martin McDonagh's best film, I think. I think it's better than In Bruges. I think it's far better than Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I loved Seven Psychopaths, but that is more a sort of screwball, dark comic genre film. That wasn't as serious a film as this one. But this is, like all of Martin McDonagh's best work, hysterically funny, unspeakably tragic, and at times shockingly violent. And the way McDonagh combines not only violence and humor, but tragedy and humor is just wonderful. It makes everything he does, whether it's a play or a film, just this emotional roller coaster where you never know what's going to happen next, and you also never know what you're going to feel next. You don't know if you're going to gasp in horror, get a tear in your eye because something is really tragic, or just burst out laughing. Like every second has a different emotional response in store for you. It's just masterfully written, beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and ultimately leaves you with a sort of bittersweet feeling that some things can be repaired and some things cannot. And I think it's just a really, really wonderful movie. It was so great to see him come back in a true return to form. I mean, I'm a huge fan of McDonagh's films and his theatrical works. He obviously has written a bunch of plays set in Ireland, which is you would think with a name like McDonagh, that's his native land, and his family does live there, but he actually grew up in London, so he actually speaks more like a Brit. But he definitely has that Irish gallows humor about him, which makes its way into all of his different theatrical works. He's written a bunch of plays that take place in Ireland, in these sort of small villages where everybody knows each other and they gossip about each other. So it really has this like wonderful pastoral vibe, this like setting of this almost fantastical place of like an old time village where gossip spreads really, really quickly. And, you know, there's the town priest and there's the town doctor and there's the town bartender. And then he's also written some other works that take place here in the States. His crowning theatrical work is The Pillow Man, which takes place in this sort of fictitious dystopian totalitarian state. That is an absolutely phenomenal play. So he's just a wonderful writer, but this really is him at his best. It is him combining everything he does best. Like I said, just the tragedy, the melancholy with the shocking body violence, and of course, just hysterical, dark comedy. And so this is a home run.
Yeah, no, it was really, really good. And I love the decision to obviously set the movie when they did against the backdrop of this civil war. And so whilst there is a civil war going on between these two friends, is kind of a great anti-war message, actually, in the film. But yeah, I loved it forever. All the reasons that you liked it, the combining of the black humor with these kind of darker, more serious elements. I didn't see In Bruges until after I saw this movie, which was interesting because In Bruges also contains a lot of dark elements, but it's a much lighter film, which
well, the thing about In Bruges is it's a genre movie. It's a crime caper.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
And so it doesn't have the gravity of this because this is not a genre film. This is a drama. This is just a personal drama. Yeah. There are no genre tropes in this movie the way there are in Bruges. And In Bruges is a great movie, but it's a genre film. Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed that. But it was weird because just seeing the same two actors kind of tackle this a little bit more of a heavier material, and then to immediately see them a lot funnier. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it for all those reasons. I thought Barry Keoghan, who's nominated this year, that section of the film was very good. It was very sad, very moving at times. But and just beautifully photographed. I remember trying to figure out who the cinematographer was throughout the entire movie, which if I didn't mention, the cinematographer of the cinematography in Babylon was also obviously top tier. But here it was shot by a guy named Ben Davis, who actually shoots a lot of the Marvel films, actually. And this was just a gorgeous capturing of what life is like in that kind of isolated Irish village. It was just probably from the movies that I've seen, is probably McDonagh's most beautifully shot. And I like you also kind of thought that Three Billboards won Best Picture, right?
No, Three Billboards did not win Best Picture. I forget which one that year, but it didn't even win Best Screenplay. I forget what it was that year, but it was
Someone won
nominated.
that year, though. Someone won for it that year. Someone.
Well, Frances McDormand won Best
Right.
Actress, and Sam
Right. Okay.
Rockwell won for Best
Right. Yeah.
Supporting
That okay. That's
Actor.
probably what I'm thinking of. But yeah, I was of the ilk that was the overrated, and I was. I'll bring this up probably again when we do the Oscar show, but unfortunately, I think that Three Billboards, because it got all that praise a few years ago, that kind of has diluted Banshees when Banshees probably earns it more. And up until recently, it looked like it was going to be Banshees or Fablemans, but now it looks like Everything Everywhere All at Once might
Might be the
squash that.
favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we'll talk about that next week. But
The thing
overall,
about
yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the thing about Three Billboards is it's interesting that you mentioned that film because it seemed from watching the trailers for this movie that it might fall victim to the same design flaw of Three Billboards. So, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I'm sure many of you watching this have seen that movie. It's about this mother of a daughter who's been murdered, sort of shaming the cops into solving the murder. But it's ultimately this kind of unsolvable murder. And while that is an interesting idea, of course, sort of inherent to the idea is the premise that the case is not solvable, and so the movie just sort of runs out of momentum. The plot just kind of has nowhere to go. It's an interesting idea, but it can't really sustain a feature length narrative film. And I kind of thought the same might be true for this movie because it's okay. The
yeah.
premise is a friend ends a friendship for no apparent reason. Okay, interesting idea, but where can this go? Can you actually get 2 hours of runtime and you maintain a narrative momentum out of this? I wasn't sure. And so this movie does a much stronger job of that because of how it escalates and the suspense that it creates throughout the film. And the thing about this movie is, and the thing about all of McDonough's work that makes it so exciting and so thrilling to watch is that, as McDonough has proven over and over again throughout his plays and his films, there is nowhere he will not go. There's nothing he won't subject his characters to. There's no amount of pain he will not subject his audience to. He is not afraid to traumatize the audience, as he has done several times throughout all of his other works. So there's a scene in this movie where Colin Farrell is going to retaliate against his friend for this grave offense that his friend has committed against him. And what this retaliatory action would involve doing is something that is really unspeakably evil. And I don't want to spoil it, but during the scene where he's deciding whether or not to do it, you legitimately don't know if he's going to go through with it. And my wife Amanda was saying, if he does this, I'm turning the movie off. Right? Because there are certain things that are just too much for an audience to take. And we're both sitting there on the edge of our seats wondering if he'll actually go through with this because, as this writer director has proven time and again, there's no saying he won't. And it creates this incredible suspense, real suspense, because 9 out of 10 movies, you're like, okay, they're not going to do that. They won't go there. So yeah, while the movie is signaling to us that theoretically it might go to this dark place, we know it's not going to. In one of McDonough's films or plays, you don't have that guarantee. And it just makes them really, really exciting to watch. That's why all of his stuff, all of his films, all of his theater works, they are true events in that way. Like, you go into a theater literally not knowing what you are going to see. And it's scary and it's suspenseful. But he breaks that tension with moments of just hysterical, dark humor. Colm is obviously trying to find meaning through being an artist, through being a musician, but he's obviously not very good at it. And there's this great scene in the movie where he has mutilated himself to the point where he can't really play his music anymore. And he's at the session at the pub having the time of his life now that he is freed of the pressure to actually perform on the violin, because now he's free to just vibe with the music because he can't play anymore because of what he's done to himself. And you get the sense that the reason he gave this ultimatum to his friend was not so much to stick it to his friend, but as a way to cope with his own failings, his own sort of inability to realize whatever genius he thinks is in him. And he feels like if he literally mutilates himself, he can provide himself an excuse for why he doesn't have to try anymore. And it's just wonderful. Obviously, there's the priest character. A really interesting flourish of this film was the actual Banshee. There is this character, this old woman who roams the island in a cloak. She is sort of the physical metaphor for death itself. It has all of these really poetic, almost fantastical, sort of mythological elements that it weaves into this very down-to-earth narrative. And so it's just a real poetic film that really is just a very, very profound viewing experience. It's something I recommend really, really highly.
Yeah, no, it really is great. And like you mentioned, I mean, if you just watch the trailer for this movie, you just think it's about a guy who doesn't want to be friends with another guy anymore.
Yeah, it makes it look a little boring. Yeah.
But there is so much more to it than that. And knowing, obviously, as you mentioned, McDonough's work is that there's going to be layers to it. There's going to be something else. So don't go by the marketing. Actually, you're going to have to see for yourself.
Yeah, and the marketing really doesn't. I mean, one of the things that the trailer does, it undersells the movie in terms of just how interesting it is. Because there are people, I have like certain friends who are like, "Oh, that looks boring" based on the trailer, and I don't blame them for thinking that. But it also really, I mean, if you go into this movie only knowing what the trailer tells you, you are not only in for a surprise, but you might be in for a shock. Like the trailer does not suggest that this gets as brutal and as violent and as morbid as it does. I mean, the movie really does descend into almost a horror comedy by the end. I mean, there are just straight up horror elements to this movie at times that the trailer absolutely does not prepare you for. So I could see how some audience members might come out of this being like, whoa, that was more than I bargained for going in. Yeah. But if you know what you're in for going in, you will love it. It's a really, really great movie. I believe it's still streaming on HBO Max, and it's available. You know, you can order it on all the outlets online now. And you should, because I think McDonagh's finally going to win his best screenplay Oscar for this. He's been nominated a few times. I think he'll win for this.
All right.
I don't think the movie's going to take home the ultimate gold, which it should in my view. But he should finally win one for this. And he's absolutely worthy. I mean, the script is flawless.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So we will be back on Wednesday. We might even do that live. We'll see if we can make that happen. We don't know yet, but we will be back on Wednesday for a special time slot doing our Oscar preview. Thanks, Justin, for joining. This was a fun one.
See you next week.
It's fun to talk about movies we like, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.